Something feels slightly off about this place. Not wrong, not dangerous, just not quite settled. The hollow at the base of the rock is deep enough to sit in, but you haven't yet. You're standing at the edge of it, looking out the way you came, and the land runs flat for a good distance before it folds into the tree line. You can see across it. That matters more than the hollow itself. You turn and look at the hollow again. The ground is dry. Dry is good. The rock curves overhead enough to break wind, maybe break rain if it comes. There is no sign anything else has been resting here, no smell, no markings, no old bones. That matters too. Still, you don't go in yet. You stand and you listen. The birds in the trees to the east are moving and calling. Moving birds mean nothing is disturbing them from the ground. Calling birds mean they are not alarmed. You know this without thinking it, the way you know which routes to avoid when walking wet ground. It's just part of how the world sounds when it's safe. You let your shoulders drop slightly. Just slightly. This is not safety. This is a moment in which danger has not arrived yet. That is a different thing. But it's what there is, and it's enough to act on. Wherever you are as you listen, if you enjoy this kind of calm storytelling, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you genuinely like it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see where these quiet moments are being shared. Settle yourself now. Let your weight shift downward. There's no urgency in any of this. The world you're moving through is slow by its own nature, full of long stretches of nothing happening, of watching and waiting and gradually becoming sure. Let that pace come into you now. The hollow is yours for the moment. You move into it and crouch first, which keeps your profile low, keeps you below the horizon from anything watching across the flat land. You press one hand against the earth inside, cool and dry. The rock holds a faint warmth on its inner face from whatever sun reached it earlier. You sit with your back to that warm surface and face outward. This is how you choose places to rest, not by comfort alone, by what you can see from them, by how many directions something could come from, and how many of those directions you can watch at once. From here, you can watch most of the flat ground to the west and south. The trees to the east are too close for comfort, but the wind is coming from them, and anything moving through would stir the air ahead of it. You'd smell it before you saw it. Probably. Maybe not always. But probably. The gap to the north is a problem. There is a low ridge there, and you cannot see beyond it. You keep looking at it, not constantly, just regularly, the way your attention circles the edges of where you are, the way water finds the edges of a vessel. Nothing on the ridge. You look back at the tree line, still moving, still calling. Research suggests that early humans developed a kind of ambient attention, a background state of monitoring that required very little active thought but processed environmental sounds, smells, and light changes almost continuously. It freed the thinking mind for other things. But it never fully stopped. There is a river not far from here, and you can hear it. Not see it, it's below a low bank, but the sound of it carries steadily, a low rushing underneath everything else. Rivers are useful for many reasons, but sound is one of them. They cover the sounds of your own movement when you need to move quietly. They also cover the sounds of things moving toward you, and so you don't rest too close. Close enough to find water quickly, far enough that the sound doesn't blind you. You found this balance without calculating it. You just knew not to sleep right at the water's edge. You've always known that. The light is starting to change. Not dramatically, the sky is not yet shifting color, but the quality of it is different, thinner somehow. The shadows have moved since you arrived. You note this. You have some time. Not a great deal of time, but some. There is wood to gather if there is going to be a fire tonight. Dry wood, not green. Dry wood burns more quietly and makes less smoke. You don't want to announce where you are any more than necessary. There is a gap between the desire for warmth and the risk of visibility, and you navigate that gap every time. Sometimes you choose warmth, sometimes you choose dark. It depends on who else might be nearby, on how far sound carries, on how the night feels. Tonight you will choose warmth. The open ground gives you enough visibility that you're more afraid of the cold than of being seen. You leave the hollow and walk east along the base of the rock, staying close to it. You walk quietly, not dramatically quietly, not creeping, just with the low impact step that comes from habit, from years of learning that your presence in the world does not need to be loud. Your feet read the ground before committing weight, roots, loose stone, dry leaves that would crack. You avoid these without looking at them directly. This is just walking. But it is walking carefully. There is a small cluster of fallen branches 15 paces off the rock face, where a dead tree has been slowly breaking apart. You've walked past it twice today. Dry. The smaller ones will light easily. The larger ones will hold the heat longer. You gather the small ones first, tucking them under your arm. The larger one you drag. You're not quiet about the dragging, it makes a pulling, scraping sound, but you've scanned the area enough times today that you're not alarmed by your own noise here. You've earned a small confidence in this specific ground. You carry the wood back to the hollow. You are already planning the fire before you've built it, thinking about where the wind is coming from, where the smoke will go, how far back into the hollow to build it so it has the rock as a reflector for the heat. You've done this enough times that it's not planning exactly. It's more like remembering in advance. The stone ring is still there from whenever someone else was here last. You use it. You don't know who built it or how long ago, but the ash inside is old and cold, and the ring itself is steady. It's a kind of inheritance. Small, practical, unremarkable. You begin to build the fire the way you always begin. Dry grass and fine bark, pressed loosely together to let air through. Then the smallest sticks, crossed at angles. Then slightly larger. You are patient with this. Rushing makes waste. You don't rush. When you strike the first spark and it catches and you lean close and breathe it carefully to life, there is a feeling that comes with that moment. Something quiet and warm and old. The fire is yours now. It will eat the wood slowly and give back heat and light and the specific kind of company that fire gives. Not comfort exactly, but presence. A thing occupying the center of the camp that says, without words, that this place is used by something that makes fire. Most things that would harm you do not want to be near fire. You have always known this. The feeling of exposure returns even with the fire lit. The firelight only reaches so far, and beyond it, the darkness is thicker than the darkness before you lit it. Your eyes, now adjusted to the brightness close to you, cannot see as deeply into the edges of the space. The fire narrows your vision even as it comforts you. You are aware of this. It's not frightening. It's just a fact about fire that you carry. You position yourself slightly to the side of the fire, not directly behind it, so the light doesn't form a halo around you. You want to see out more than you want to be seen. It's a small thing. A habit. Most of your safety comes from small habits accumulated and repeated until they are no longer choices. The air is still. The river sounds closer in the quiet. The birds have stopped moving now, it's too dark for that, but you can hear an owl somewhere in the forest to the east, and owls moving and calling mean the larger things are not disturbing that part of the woods. That's something. It's not much, but it's something. You add a piece of wood to the fire and pull your knees closer to your chest and watch the gap to the north. Nothing. The warmth reaches your hands and you let your eyes unfocus slightly, still watching, but softly, not staring. Staring makes you blind to movement at the edges. You watch the way you've always watched at night, not fixed, not searching, just open, receiving. Sometime later you hear something, not something alarming, a rustling, low, brief, about 20 paces to the south, the direction of the flat ground. You go still without deciding to, the way all animals go still at an uncertain sound. Stillness is instinct. It's the first response. You listen. The rustling comes again. Small, rhythmic. Something in the grass, something small, moving with the kind of pattern that is either foraging or investigating. You feel your shoulders slowly lower. Small animals that are foraging are not themselves alarmed. That tells you something. You wait anyway. Another long count of listening. The sound continues, then stops, then starts again farther off. Moving away. You breathe out. There is relief in the sound of small things continuing to move and go about their lives nearby. It means nothing has disturbed the ground-level world in the direction they're foraging. It means the world out there is more or less as it should be. You add another piece of wood to the fire. You have been alone today. This is unusual, but not rare. Sometimes the group moves faster than you or slower. Sometimes there are reasons to separate for parts of a day. But you don't prefer it. Being alone means all of this, all the watching, the listening, the building, the choosing of places, falls entirely to you. With others, it's distributed. Someone else watches the North Gap. Someone keeps the fire. The listening is shared across more ears. Being alone is survivable, but it's work in a way that being together isn't. Early humans, even early ones, long before anything like formal community, appear to have been deeply, practically social, not just for emotional reasons, but because safety itself was partly a function of numbers. More eyes, more ears, more noses. The group was itself a kind of protective structure. You think, without using those words, that you prefer people nearby. The fire pops softly, a sound like wood making up its mind about something. The night deepens. You have added wood twice more. The fire has settled into a lower rhythm now, steady and contained, more useful than dramatic. You don't want a big fire. You want a lasting one. At some point, you lie down on your side, facing outward, face toward the gap in the rock that gives you line of sight to the flat ground. You don't decide to sleep exactly. You just let your body move toward rest without committing to it. There is a difference between sleeping and lying down. Lying down is rest that can be reversed quickly. Sleep is the deeper thing, the thing that makes you less aware of what the world is doing, and so sleep requires something. Some condition to be met. Tonight the condition is met approximately. The fire is lit. The hollow has only one open side. You've heard no alarming sounds for a long time. The birds were right earlier. The small animal was foraging normally. Nothing has moved on the ridge to the north. You are still partly awake. One ear still processing. That too is a kind of habit, resting in layers, the top layer always slightly available, slightly listening. This is not a comfortable arrangement. But it has kept you alive. In the gray early hours before the light really arrives, you become aware of something. Not a sound. The absence of one. The river, which has been running consistently all night, is still there. The light wind, occasional and soft, is still there. But the low-level chorus of insects that has been present since well before dark is quieter than it should be. Not gone, just reduced, just different. You are upright before you've consciously decided to move. You don't make a sound. You sit with your back against the rock, facing out, and you wait. The fire is low but still orange, casting maybe 6 paces of useful light. You watch the gap to the north. Nothing. You watch the flat ground. Nothing. The insects gradually resume. First one area, then another, like a sound filling back into a space from which it was briefly pressed. You listen to them come back. You wait until they're fully back. Then you wait longer. Nothing comes. Sometimes the night just shifts. Animals move and other animals respond to that movement, and the whole sonic landscape adjusts and then corrects itself. Not everything is a threat. Most things that could be a threat pass by without engaging. The world is full of proximity without contact. You lie back down, but now you don't sleep. You rest, but not deeply. There's a residue of alertness left over from that shift in sound, and it doesn't fully dissolve until the sky begins to change and the birds come back online and the world brightens back into the ordinary. Safety, when it comes gradually. Morning. Not warm yet, but the quality of cold has changed. Night cold is a different weight than morning cold. You know the difference in your body. You stretch without standing. There are pains from the stone floor that you acknowledge and then set aside. This is normal. Most surfaces you sleep on are stone or packed earth. You have never slept on anything that would count as comfortable by any later standard. But the body adapts. The body is extremely good at adapting. You stand and look at the flat ground in the early light. It is featureless and quiet and ordinary. The ridge to the north shows nothing. The trees to the east are beginning to be visited by birds moving along branches, which is one of the first sounds of a usable morning. You listen to that. It sounds like a normal morning. You bank the fire, covering it with ash to hold a coal, something that can be relit later if needed, and you drink from the water you brought in a container of folded bark, wrapped tight and propped carefully against the rock last night. Not much water, but enough for now. The river is close. You do not stay in the hollow. It was a good place for last night, and it will be a good place for other nights, but you don't grow attached. Attachment to a particular place is a different kind of vulnerability. When the people you travel with return, you'll decide together where to go. You pick up what you carried in. You carry it with you now as you walk out into the morning. The landscape to the west is open, rolling very gradually upward to a low ridge about an hour's walk from the hollow. There is grass, long and pale in the early light, and scattered rock outcrops, and far to the north, something that might be a line of trees along a waterway, or might just be distance and shadow, you can't tell yet. You walk toward it. You walk at a pace that is not hurried. Hurried movement attracts attention. Hurried movement means you're not watching the ground. You walk at the pace that lets you cover distance while still looking ahead to both sides, occasionally behind. Early humans covered significant distance this way. Not running, not even walking briskly by any common measure, but steady. Consistent. The pace that can be maintained all day over rough ground. You feel your body settle into it. The rhythm of it is almost meditative in its consistency. Left, right, wait, ground, wait, ground. The grass parts around your legs. The air is cold still, but moving, and the movement of it against your face tells you which direction it comes from, and you feel it change slightly as you descend into a shallow bowl of land between two long hillocks. The bowl has a different feeling than the open ridge. Enclosed. Not comfortably, you move through it without stopping, and when you come back up to open ground on the other side, your attention releases again. You prefer open ground. You prefer being able to see. By mid-morning you have come down to the river at a place where the bank is low and the water is shallow enough to cross. You stand at the edge and watch the water for a moment. You're watching for signs of recent large animal activity along the bank, disturbed mud, deep prints, broken vegetation. The banks are undisturbed on both sides that you can see. You drink from cupped hands. The water is cold and tastes of stone. You drink enough, but not so much that the weight of it affects how you move. Then you cross. The crossing is ankle deep at the shallowest point, cold. You go slow, watching where you step, keeping your balance carefully because a fall in cold water is not dramatic, it's practical misery, and wet clothes in cool air have real consequences. You make it across without incident. On the other side of the river, the land changes. The grass gives way to a lower, denser growth, more shrub than grass, and the ground is darker and softer underfoot. Slightly boggy in places. You test each step more deliberately here. Boggy ground can hold a foot in ways that are harder to recover from than hard ground. You stay toward the edges of the wetter patches. There are berries on some of the shrubs. You know these. Red, small, clustered. You eat a handful as you pass, and they're sour but edible, and you eat a few more. Not many. You know better than to eat too many unfamiliar things in a short time, even things you've eaten before. That's just caution. That's just how you move through the world. The land north of the river opens up again. You stop on a slight rise and look around. To the left, a stand of taller trees. To the right, open grassland running to another ridge. Ahead, the land flattens and then rises gently toward what looks like a slope with good rock coverage. Research on early humans suggests that high vantage points were disproportionately selected across many different cultures and periods, not just for defense, but for the simple cognitive comfort of being able to see the world at a distance. You look toward the slope with the rock coverage and decide, without much deliberation, to move toward it. It takes most of the morning to reach the base of the slope. The ground on the way is mostly open, which you prefer, though there is one stretch through a small woodland where the shade is so deep that very little grows on the ground and the visibility is good between the thick trunks. You move through that part without slowing. Open understory is safer than dense understory. You've always known this. At the base of the slope you sit for a while. Not to rest exactly, though rest is useful, but to observe. From here you can see all the ground you crossed this morning laid out behind you. The river is a dark line in the distance. The hollow where you slept is somewhere beyond that, hidden in the landform. The world looks different from a slight height. Wider. More readable. You watch it for a long time. A line of birds passes high above from east to west. Large ones, unhurried. That means nothing specific, but it's a piece of the picture. The wind has picked up slightly. The clouds to the west are thicker than they were at dawn, which means weather might be coming, or might not. Weather doesn't always follow through on what it implies in the morning. You eat a little of what you're carrying. Not much, just enough. Then you stand and turn to look at the slope. The rock here is good. Layered, broken into shelves and overhangs at irregular intervals. There are places partway up where you could sit with your back protected and your view preserved, maybe higher than you need for tonight. But worth looking at. You begin to climb. The climbing is slow and careful. The rock is not sheer, it's more like a steep scramble than a technical climb, but loose in places. And you test each handhold and foothold before trusting it. You don't take risks on rock. Rock that fails doesn't give warning. Halfway up there is an overhang that creates a ledge about 2 meters deep and perhaps 4 meters wide. The floor of it is gritty rock dust and dry, very dry. The ceiling curves down at the back. You would not stand upright at the back, but you could sit, could sleep. The opening faces south and slightly east, which means morning sun, which means warmth at the beginning of the day. You stand in the opening and look out. You can see for a significant distance. The flat ground below, the woodland to the south, the river line, and beyond that the gradual roll of the land to the horizon. There is no movement anywhere that you can see, just land and wind moving through it and birds at a distance. You look at the ledge again. The ceiling. You look at the floor. No droppings, no bones, no smell of anything having been here regularly. The dust on the floor has a fine, undisturbed quality. You sit down on the ledge floor close to the opening and let your legs hang over the edge slightly. The drop below you is not dangerous, maybe 3 meters to the next ledge. You could get down quickly if needed, or you could be up here with a significant advantage of height over anything on the ground. This is a very good place. The word good is not quite right. It's adequate in multiple important ways simultaneously. That's what you mean by good. You make a small fire in the far back corner of the ledge where the ceiling is lowest. The smoke curls up and along the ceiling and finds its way out through a gap you hadn't noticed at the back. A vertical crack, narrow but consistent, that creates a draft. Lucky, or not lucky, just another feature of the rock that you assessed when you arrived. Partly consciously, partly not. The fire on the ledge is smaller than the fire in the hollow last night. Up here, it needs to be. The wall of smoke would become suffocating in an enclosed space. You feed it small pieces, keep the flame low, let it burn more for warmth than for light. The light outside is doing what light does in the middle of the afternoon, still bright, still high, still several hours from dusk. You're not worried about tonight yet. There's time. You use the time to rest properly. The kind of rest that is still aware but more genuinely relaxed. Because the situation warrants it. You lie on your side facing the opening and the long view, and you let your breathing slow down and you watch the clouds moving over the far ridge, and you feel the heat of the little fire at your back. Somewhere below, far to the south, you hear a long, low sound that might be an animal calling or might be wind through a specific gap in the rock. You listen to it until it stops. Then, quiet. Then, only the wind and the fire. Small movements in the grass below, 3 of them moving together. Deer, or something like deer, you can't see clearly at this distance, picking their way across the open ground. They're moving from the woodland to the river, and they're not alarmed. Which means the path they're taking is clear of anything that would alarm them. You watch until they pass below the bank and out of sight. Something releases in your shoulders again. Animals that move normally are one of the better signals available to you. They read the world continuously. When they read it as safe, you can take some comfort in that, even though you know they can also be wrong. Even though you know the thing that is dangerous to you might not be dangerous to them. But there is still information in it. You look at the clouds again. The weather seems to have decided against arriving today. The thickness to the west has not moved closer in the time you've been watching. You sit up and tend the fire. Dusk, and the question is whether anyone else will come tonight. You've been alone for most of a day now, and while you are not frightened by it, you are aware of it in a way that goes below thinking. The body keeps a kind of account of how much exposure it has been managing unshared. It has a preference for shared exposure. That preference is not loud, but it's constant. You scan the ground below in the fading light. Nothing. The deer are gone. The birds are settling. From up here, you could see a fire from a significant distance. You could see the smoke before the fire, if the light were right. You have not seen one. This is both reassuring and slightly isolating. You know where the others went, roughly. You know the direction. If they've stopped and camped for the night, they would have a fire. But the distance might be too great to see it. You add wood to your own fire just a little. And you watch the night come in from the east. The stars come out one at a time and then all together, and the sky above the opening to the ledge is enormous and full of them, and the river down in the dark makes its sound, and the wind has dropped to almost nothing, and you lie on your back in the warmth of the small fire and look up at what you can see of the sky. This is not particularly beautiful to you. It is not stirring or moving or poetic, it's just the sky at night, which is what there is when there is nothing else to look at. It's ordinary. It's the ordinary ceiling of the world. You turn on your side and face the opening and watch the darkness below, and after a while your eyes stop finding the edges of things and just rest on the vague shape of the world in darkness, and your breathing slows further and the fire drops to coals, and somewhere much later in the night you slide into something that is probably sleep. You wake with the sense that something woke you. Not a sound. A shift in air. The night has moved into its deep part, the part before any hint of dawn, and the cold has gotten into the rock and then into you, and you sit up and find the fire nearly out. You rebuild it quickly, efficiently. You know how to coax coals back without waking the night fully. A small breath, carefully aimed. A handful of fine material. Then the tiniest sticks. It comes back. You sit by it and listen. Nothing alarming. You think maybe it was the cold that woke you. Sometimes the body wakes the mind to address a physical need. You pull your wrappings tighter and sit close to the rebuilt fire and wait for your heart rate to drop back. The night below is quiet. Really quiet, the kind of quiet that, in a particular state of mind, can feel like everything is listening to everything else. That's not a thought you've put into words. It's just a feeling, a quality of the silence. You sit with it. After a long time, you become aware that your alertness has been unnecessary. The quiet is actual quiet, not precautionary quiet. The world has no edges tonight. You lie back down. Sleep comes back more easily this time. Morning on the ledge. The first light arrives over the eastern edge of the land and hits the opening of the ledge directly as you predicted, and the warmth of it on your face is one of the most reliable feelings in the world. It arrives on time. It has always arrived on time. You have slept through cold and difficulty and mild uncertainty, and the morning has come back regardless, and this too is a kind of safety, not the absence of danger, but the reliability of certain things continuing. You sit up and look out. The world below is gray and gold in the early light and empty of anything remarkable. The woodland to the south has its morning birds, moving and calling in ways that mean the night has passed normally. The river is the same river. The distant ridge is the same ridge. You stand and stretch at the edge of the ledge and feel the height of it, the drop below you, the view, the open air. There is something in height that feels like clarity, though you couldn't say that exactly. Just that from up here the world seems to have more room in it. You decide to descend. Not because anything is wrong with the ledge. Because you want to find the others. The descent is careful and slow. Going down is harder than going up. Your weight is in the wrong direction. Your eyes can't see where your feet are going the same way they can when you climb. You go one movement at a time, testing, adjusting. You reach the bottom without difficulty. The ground at the base of the slope feels different after the ledge. Closer, more immediate. You can't see as far. The world has its edges back. You start south, toward where you crossed the river yesterday, toward the direction the others would be if they followed the route you all discussed before you separated. 2 hours into walking, you see the fire. Not a fire that is currently burning, a rising thread of smoke, thin and pale, from beyond a line of low trees about half a kilometer to your right. The smoke of a fire being managed, not extinguished. A maintained fire means people who are still there, who have not moved on yet. You change direction toward it. You call out as you approach. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a sound that says, "It's me, it's one of yours." Because approaching a camp without warning is careless. People who are maintaining awareness will respond to something unexpected in a way that can escalate before recognition. So you call. There is a response. A shape at the edge of the trees lifts its head. You walk in. There are 4 of them around the fire. 2 adults, 2 smaller ones still half asleep in their wrappings. The fire is good, well built, appropriate for morning, low and steady. There is food from the night before set back from the fire on rock. The camp is positioned with its back to a dense thicket and its face to open ground, which is exactly where you'd have positioned it if you'd made it. You sit by the fire. Someone passes you something to eat without much ceremony. You eat it. Nobody says much. There's no need. The group being intact is itself a kind of conversation. You're all aware of the same things. It was a good night, the weather held, everyone is present, the fire is going, the ground is open and visible, the thicket at the back is a suitable barrier. These things don't need to be said. You watch the open ground together. This is a kind of safety that the ledge could not provide. Not the visibility, not the height, not the good overhang, but this. The shared attention, the distribution of awareness across multiple people who are each doing part of the monitoring without discussing it. One person faces the open ground. Another, without comment, has their back slightly angled toward the thicket. The smaller ones are between the adults and the fire. Research suggests that fire itself may have been one of the earliest tools for social cohesion, not just warmth and protection, but a shared center around which groups could orient, synchronize, and collectively rest. The fire is a middle point. The rest of the arrangement falls around it. Late morning, and the group begins to move. The fire is banked the same way you always bank it, covered, a coal held for later, or abandoned entirely if this is not a place you'll return to. You pack what you've been carrying, and the others do the same. The smaller ones are awake and walking now, slow and quiet still. You move in a loose group, not in a line, not in a cluster. A shape that lets everyone have some visibility in multiple directions without anyone announcing a formation. You've never discussed moving this way. You just do. The land today is new. You haven't been in this particular stretch of grassland before, or if you have, it was long enough ago that it feels new, which is almost the same thing. New land requires more attention. You know where the water is. Roughly, the river runs broadly north in this region, so you can find it if needed. But you don't know what the ground is like under the grass. Don't know what the trees to the north might hold. Don't know the landmarks well enough to use them for orientation. You walk with more awareness than usual. Not anxiously, just attentively. The grassland gives way, after a long stretch of walking, to a different kind of ground. Harder, stonier, with outcrops of flat rock breaking through the surface at irregular intervals. Walking is easier here, because you can see your footing, and also slightly harder because the rock is sometimes loose and sometimes slippery from an earlier rain. You test each step without making a performance of it. The group has slowed slightly. Everyone is reading the ground more carefully. Ahead, a slight rise, and beyond it you can't yet see what comes next. One of the adults moves slightly ahead of the group, not by much, not dramatically, and crests the rise and pauses and looks before the rest of you reach the top. This is a thing you do. Someone goes slightly first to see, not a leader and followers exactly. It changes who goes first depending on who is at the front, depending on the ground. Just one person takes slightly more risk so the rest of the group can take slightly less. Then the first person signals that it's ordinary and everyone comes forward. It's ordinary. You all come forward. What's beyond the rise is more open grassland, rolling very gently down to what looks like a shallow seasonal lake. Mostly dry now. A flat pale expanse with a dark wet patch in the center, and in the distance another tree line, and beyond that more sky. Nothing moves on the pale flat of the dry lake. You cross toward the tree line. Midday, and the heat has arrived in earnest. You stop in the shade of a lone tree at the edge of the tree line. The shade is specific and clean, the way shade under a well-separated tree in open land can be. Not the complicated shade of a full woodland, but a single circle of relief. You sit in it. The others sit or lie nearby. The smaller ones are asleep almost immediately. Midday is rest time for them. It has always been rest time for them. The adults take turns actually resting and keeping watch, though keeping watch here is less vigilant than the night was. The world is visible in all directions. There is nothing alarming in any of them. One adult rests, one adult watches. Then they switch. You are the watcher. You sit with your back to the tree and your face to the open land and the dry lake, and you let your eyes do what they do in open land in full light, a slow, roving, unhurried survey. Nothing on the lake, nothing in the grass. A few shapes very far to the east that might be animals or might be dark stones. Too far to matter. The wind has died. The heat is sitting directly down. You feel sweat at your hairline. You drink from what you have left from the river. Not much. You'll need to find water before too long, and the darker patch in the center of the lake might be accessible enough to drink from, or might not. You'll check when you move. A small insect lands on your arm and walks in a purposeful line from wrist to elbow and lifts off. You watch it go. The world is very ordinary right now. There's a kind of safety in ordinariness that is as real as any other kind. When the world is doing what the world does, animals moving normally, weather behaving in expected ways, ground holding your weight, water where water should be, the baseline threat level is low. You feel this as a mild loosening of something you don't entirely notice until it loosens. You are not in danger right now. That statement sounds simple. But the absence of danger is not the default state. The default state is uncertainty. Not danger, not safety, uncertainty. The question is always open. What you can do is take actions that reduce the likelihood of the uncertainty resolving badly. That is what all of this is. The choosing of places, the watching, the fire, the moving in groups, the reading of animal behavior, the assessment of ground and height and cover. It doesn't close the question, it just makes the odds a little better. And that has always been enough to act on. The group moves again in the mid-afternoon, rested and slightly cooler, and you head for the water. The dark patch at the center of the dry lake is accessible. The ground around it is firm, dried mud with some give but not enough to trap a foot, and the water itself, when you test it, is fine. Slightly muddy, but drinkable. You drink. The others drink. The small ones are helped to drink. The ritual of finding and drinking water is one of the most repeated patterns in any given day. It structures the movement. Water is where you're going, often, or water is what you're tracking the distance from. The whole geography of a day can be organized around water. Where it is, how long since you drank, how long you can go, where the next source is likely to be. You fill your container at the lake and seal it carefully. Then you continue. By late afternoon, you have found a place that the group has been before. You can tell because there is a ring of stones, a fire ring, old and partly collapsed on one side, and because one of the adults makes a small sound of recognition and heads for a particular spot along the base of a low cliff, and when you follow, there is a shallow indentation in the rock face that is dry and has that quality of having been used before, not recently, but before. Familiar places have a particular kind of safety in them. Not because they're inherently safer than unfamiliar places, but because you know them. You know where the water is relative to this camp. You know what the night sounds like from here. You know which direction the morning light comes from. This accumulated knowledge is itself a resource. There's also something else, harder to name, the sense that people have survived here before. That the place has been found adequate. That whatever tested this place was found insufficient against it. You don't know that this is true. But the familiar fire ring and the worn indentation in the rock suggest it, and suggestion is part of how safety is built. You rebuild the fire ring where it has collapsed. This takes only a few minutes. The stones are right there. Evening settles in layers, the light drops, and the temperature drops with it, and the fire is built in the ring and comes to life, and the group distributes itself around it in the arrangement that always reassembles. Adults facing outward, smaller ones toward the center, fire between everyone and the edge of the camp. This is such a consistent arrangement that you can rebuild it anywhere, in any camp, with any combination of the group. It's a spatial grammar that everyone knows. The cliff at your back means only one direction requires sustained attention. The cliff has no ledges accessible from outside the camp. This is something you checked when you arrived. A cliff with ledges is a different thing from a cliff without them. This one is smooth and sheer from the outside. You checked by walking along it, and your camp is in the one sheltered indentation. You have half of the arc to watch. Someone else has the other half. You watch yours. The evening sounds arrive, insects resuming after the silence of late afternoon, owls beginning in the forest somewhere to the west, the faint breath of cooling air from the cliff face behind you. Familiar. Ordinary. Exactly as this place should sound. One of the adults, not you, gets up and walks to the edge of the firelight and stands there for a moment, looking out, then comes back and sits down. Nothing to report. Just checking. just doing the thing you do periodically when you are a person who has learned that the edges of a camp require occasional attention. You do the same a while later. Walk to the edge. Look out. The land is dark and the stars are very bright and the air is still. No sounds that are wrong, no shapes that are wrong. The insects continue in all the ordinary directions. You walk back to the fire. Later, much later, the deep night quiet again. The fire is banked and glowing. Not dead, but held. The group is arranged in sleep around it, breathing at different rhythms, the small ones pressed close to the adults, everyone's feet toward the fire. You are not asleep yet. You're the one who is watching in the hours before the very early morning, the way the watching rotates across the night without being formally discussed. You just wake when it seems right, and someone else was watching before, and when you are no longer alert enough, the next person will surface from their own rest. The night is quiet. You don't find the watching oppressive tonight. Some nights it is. Some nights the alertness feels like a weight you can't set down. Tonight it feels more like occupying a quiet space that most of the world has vacated. There is something almost companionable about being awake while the rest of your group sleeps, about being the one who holds the edge of the night on their behalf. This, too, is safety, not built from stone or barrier or lock, but from being one person willing to be awake so that others do not have to be. Research suggests that the ability to sleep deeply, the kind of sleep that genuinely restores, may itself be a social feature, one that depends on the presence of others who are monitoring. Without that social layer, the body stays shallower in its rest, more reactive, as if it knows it cannot afford to go fully under. You watch the dark edges of the camp. Everything is still. An hour or more into the watching, a sound. From the west, the direction of the forest. A single, short sound, not repeated. You are still and listening before the sound has finished. You wait. Nothing follows. One of the adults nearby has surfaced slightly. You can tell by the change in breathing, the almost imperceptible shift in their body. They heard it too. But neither of you moves. You wait longer. The forest is quiet. The insects are still going. A sound that would scatter insects has not occurred. Whatever made the sound is not continuing to move in a way that disturbs the small life around it. You look at the adult. They look at you. You both wait. After a long time, longer than the sound seems to deserve, but that is how this goes. The adult settles back. You remain watching for another long stretch, and then, when everything has been quiet long enough that the quiet itself has become boring, you allow yourself to relax slightly. The thing about most sounds in the night is that they don't repeat. They don't escalate. They are the sounds of a world going about its own business in the dark, and most of that business has nothing to do with you. The hard part is sitting with the uncertainty long enough to discover that. You sit with it. Then it passes. Pre-dawn, the sky changes in a way that is gradual enough that you don't notice the exact moment it starts. One moment you are looking at pure darkness, and then there is a quality of less dark to the east that builds so slowly it seems like your eyes are imagining it. But it's real. It always comes. You feel your body shift toward a different mode of readiness. Night vigilance and day readiness are different textures. Night vigilance is stillness and listening. Day readiness is movement and seeing. You can feel the transition in yourself. The birds begin, tentatively, one or two, then more. By the time the sky is genuinely lightening, pale, soft, the specific color of early morning that has no name but is immediately recognizable, the camp is beginning to stir, not urgently, just the slow return to the surface that everyone makes at their own pace. The small ones wake confused and then not confused. The adults check, without fanfare, that everyone is present. Yes. Yes. Here. Here. The fire is coaxed back from the banked coals. The group comes back to itself, one person at a time, until it's assembled again in the morning light, present and intact. There is nothing left to threaten last night. It is over. The night is the most vulnerable part of the cycle, and it is over. That's a relief that is hard to explain to anyone who has never slept exposed. Not the relief of having survived something dramatic, most nights are not dramatic, but the quiet satisfaction of having navigated an uncertain stretch and arrived at the ordinary morning. The morning that was always going to come. The morning that has always come. You spend the morning doing ordinary things. There is water to collect. There are materials to check. The things you carry need occasional attention. A wrap retied. A tool's edge considered. The smaller ones need to move around after the night's stillness, and they do, roaming in a loose radius from the camp while the adults track them without making a performance of it. You walk the perimeter of the camp, slowly, once, not searching for something specific, just maintaining familiarity with the ground around you. This is something you do at most camps. A quiet circuit of the space, close enough to observe anything left by overnight visitors, far enough out that you'd see the approach before it arrived at the camp itself. You find nothing on the perimeter. Undisturbed. Good. You come back to the fire and sit. The middle of the day has its own rhythm. The heat discourages extended movement. The group settles into a slower mode. Someone works at a practical task. There is always a practical task. Always something that needs doing. Always something that is made rather than found. The small ones sleep again. The fire is kept at a very low level, barely going but alive. The cliff provides shade now, overhead and partially to the east. You find yourself looking out at the open ground and thinking about nothing in particular. Or not thinking, just watching. The grass moves slightly in a wind you barely feel. Something small runs along the distant edge of the grassland, too small and too fast to identify. A bird lands 20 paces away, looks at you with one eye and leaves. The world is going on around you. You are in it, and you are watching it, and it is not doing anything that requires a response. This is what most of safety actually feels like. Not relief after a threat, not victory over danger, just the world going on around you without requiring anything from you for a while. That is the best version. The version you build toward, repeatedly, imperfectly, one small decision at a time. Toward evening the group begins a discussion, not with words exactly, or not only with words, about whether to stay here another night or move on. This camp is good. The cliff, the fire ring, the familiarity. The distance to water is manageable. The ground on all sides has been observed for most of a day without presenting anything alarming. But there is also the question of what lies ahead. The route you're moving along has a purpose. Though it would be hard to state that purpose in simple terms, it's less a destination than a direction. Following food and weather and season and the accumulated knowledge of where things tend to be at this time of year. Staying is safer than moving, usually. Moving creates exposure. Moving through unfamiliar ground is inherently higher risk than staying in ground you've been in for a day. But there is also the water. The lake is small and seasonal, and the group is not small, and the group's needs include more than just tonight. You stay. Just tonight. Tomorrow, the direction. The second night at this camp is easier than the first night was anywhere this week. You know the sounds now. You know which part of the forest the owl comes from, and it does, on schedule, and you are not startled by it. You know which direction the wind arrives from after the temperature drops, and it does, and you have positioned your wrappings to account for it. The small things that made the previous nights slightly uncertain have been reduced, not eliminated. You still watch. You still listen. The watching and listening are still happening. They will always be happening, but the quality of the uncertainty is lower tonight. Familiar uncertainty rather than fresh uncertainty. That's a meaningful difference. Later. The fire is very low. The camp is quiet. The stars are doing what stars do, which is be very far away and numerous and constant and indifferent to the specific small things happening on the ground below them. You are lying on your back, resting, not yet asleep, watching the narrow band of sky visible between the cliff above and the tree line to the south. Your body is tired, pleasantly tired, the kind that comes from a full day of ordinary physical activity rather than the kind that comes from difficulty or stress. Your feet have covered significant ground today. Your arms have carried what they carried. Your eyes have been open and watching for a long time. The watching can slow now. Not stop. Just slow. The insects are steady. The owl is in its position to the west, calling at its usual intervals. The adults beside you are breathing in their sleep. The smaller ones have not woken. You are the last one awake and you know the state won't last long. The tiredness is deep enough that it will pull you under soon even here, even with the sky open above you, and the world on all sides. But there is a moment before sleep, a moment you recognize, where the alertness drops to its lowest functional level and the world becomes very simple. Just the sounds, just the stars, just the weight of the ground under you and the warmth of the people nearby and the low glow of the coals. This is not safety in the full sense. There are no walls here, no door, no lock. The world is all around you, unfenced, uncontrolled. Things could still change. They always could, but right now, at this moment, in this specific collection of circumstances, the cliff, the fire, the group, the familiar sounds, the known perimeter, the 2 days of observed undisturbed ground, the uncertainty has settled into something workable. The question is still open. It is always open. But the answer that keeps coming back is, not tonight. And tonight is enough. You close your eyes. The insects continue. The coals hold their warmth. Someone nearby breathes in and breathes out. The owl calls once and then does not call again. The world goes on at its usual distance in its usual directions, making its usual sounds. And for now, for this stretch of dark and stillness, there is nothing to do but let it. Nothing to tend, nothing to watch, nothing waiting that cannot wait. The ground is under you, solid and old. The same ground that has been here through all the nights before this one. The stars move very slowly overhead, the way they always move, the way they will always move. The fire breathes, the group breathes, you breathe. And somewhere in the long quiet space between one breath and the next, you are no longer watching, you are resting. And the night holds what the night always holds. Uncertainty, yes, but also this, the simple, temporary, completely sufficient shelter of one more ordinary moment in which nothing has gone wrong. Just the warmth. Just the dark. Just the sound of the world going on.